All right, thanks, Henry. Okay, so today we're going to cover mergers and acquisitions from a purchasing perspective. And really, this again is directed more at small and medium-sized businesses, because when we do mergers and acquisitions here at PACCAR, the VP of purchasing may get involved a little bit, or one of the senior directors, but I have been here for more than 10 years and never been involved in one purchase or one merger or acquisition. But if you're in a smaller company, you may be asked to do some of the stuff that they're talking about here. So with that, participate in company mergers, acquisitions, and or divestitures. So mergers are two equal companies which combine. An acquisition is when one firm buys another. So it's often called M&A. Corporate strategies. Companies pursue 5 basic strategies to attain their business goals. Diversification, adding a new business or location distinct from existing one. So you're in the trucking business, diversification to be maybe adding autos or something like auto parts or something like that that's not trucking. Horizontal integration, you're buying competitors. So competitors is always on a horizontal plane. Vertical integration is always customers and suppliers. So in vertical integration, you're either buying a supplier or you're buying a customer. I don't know how often you buy a customer, but pretty often we buy suppliers. So the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, will review mergers and acquisitions between large companies to ensure they will not alter the competitive landscape. So T-Mobile was running into this issue a lot. They finally got their merger with Sprint approved after trying for a number of times. But what the FTC is objecting to is the reduction in competitive offerings in the moving towards a monopoly industry. So if the FTC thinks the merger will reduce competition, they may impose conditions for the merger to proceed. Like, yeah, T-Mobile, you can merge with Sprint, but you got to sell off these 3 divisions to somebody else, something like that. So vertical is always between suppliers and customers, and horizontal is always with competitors. Reactivities. So purchasing can bring up-to-date information about the supply base, intended target companies. Usually it's much more secret than that. So they might ask like the person in charge of purchasing to discreetly look into it, but that's a pretty unusual request. Risk management. So due diligence is the process of investigating the mergers and acquisition target to understand its commercial viability. So from purchasing, the issues to investigate are strategic suppliers, current contracts, supplier financial condition. That's more finance, but okay. Well, maybe the suppliers. Okay. Supply management and measurements, supplier relationships, sustainability, and availability and volatility. So this is usually after the merger or the acquisition has been announced. Purchasing will go in and start looking at these things in a smaller company. In our company, it's all done by a finance group. Protection of supply capacity. So supply management must review the acquired company's contracts to ensure supply. And contracts may become void with the change in ownership. So you got to read the contracts to know what they entail when you change ownership. Valuation. So the company is valued partially incumbent on the value of its supply chain and the ability to continue the supply chain intact. And I would be surprised if purchasing got involved in that very often. Integration of supply chains, great potential for supply management. So consolidating suppliers, consolidating spend, identifying opportunities for supply base optimization, which really in this case would be reduction. And cost synergies. The two supply management organizations will likely have to be consolidated and integrated into one, yielding operating cost savings. Are they buying similar stuff or is it completely different stuff? So like when we bought the winch group, we don't buy a lot of the same parts. So it's not a whole lot of consolidation that goes on there. Post activities. After the deal has been signed, purchasing can help with combining the companies and integrating systems. And early purchasing involvement smooths that process.
So in the example of buying Wint's group, we didn't have a lot of consolidation. So would that be more of a horizontal acquisition?
Yeah, because you'd be buying a competitor or you'd be getting into a new industry.
Okay.
So yeah, I would say that's horizontal because they're not a customer and they're not a supplier.
Okay.
Oh. So divestitures. So this is going the opposite direction. Organizations pursue two basic strategies to reduce assets and cut costs. So outsourcing, it's a version of the make or buy decision. You decide you're going to buy it, and somebody else is going to make it for you. Virtual corporation is an organization that extensively outsources most of its activities and manages the relationships through key outsource providers for PLs and stuff like that. You see a lot of smaller internet companies do this. They have virtual warehouses where they basically just drop ship from their supplier to their customers, or they'll have 4PLs deal with it, that type of thing. They don't really own anything. Divestiture is selling a business or brand that no longer strategically fits. So it's the opposite of diversification. So divestiture of assets, the asset may be disposed or divested either after an acquisition is made or as a condition of the merger by the FTC. So the FTC may say you have to divest yourself of these divisions if you're going to merge with this company. It's often called spinning off a division, where it's stood up as its own separate entity. Assets that are likely candidates for divestitures are redundant capabilities, products that don't match strategic interests, outdated facilities, and liabilities or legacy costs. Anything. So a lot of companies back in the 90s were spinning off groups that had a lot of pension liabilities before everybody moved to the 401k. Pre-activities, contracts may need to be canceled, supply management, bargaining positions may be weakened if volumes are reduced. You have to kind of look at that stuff. Risk management, supply chain may be more prone to disruption. Supplier capacity, commitment level of some suppliers may change due to a potential lower level of spend. Impacts on contracts, impacts on agreements that refer directly to the vested business and adequate control over outsourced business activity. You have to look at how each contract or your major contracts addresses this. And valuation. Organization's valuation by its stakeholders may improve because the organization can now focus on more its core competencies, or it may deteriorate if the organization now has less control over the divested activities. And then post activities between the vested unit and the organization will have to be clarified. So methods of evaluating assets and corporate value. Purchasing is going to look at contracts with the supply base. Should look at things like the supply market, list of the major suppliers, who was in it, recommendations by suppliers about other companies, assignment. So this is a big one, and you'll see this in our T's and C's. So when you assign something, or when you assign work, it's the transfer by one party, the assigner, of their rights or obligations under a contract to another party, the assignee. So contract manufacturing is assigning your contract off, what will often be considered as an assignment, because it's the company that PACCAR contracted with or gave the PO to is no longer producing the part. They've assigned it to somebody else to produce, or they've just given that business away. So assignment can mean a few things. You got to take a look at it, but we don't like supply base assigning stuff without our permission. The contractual provisions give the parties the rights to approve or disapprove any requested assignment, and you'll see that in our T's and C's. In a merger, an assignment clause would cover the particulars of what will be acquired or assigned to the buying company. So if PACCAR's buying something, there's going to be an assignment clause that will say what part of the supply chain we're picking up. The assignment could pertain to physical assets or to existing contracts or services, material supplies, could be a lot of things. In international acquisitions, local laws must be consulted to determine if contracts are automatically transferable, and they may not be, especially if you're working in Asia or Africa. And, and whether these contracts can be canceled, you have to take a look at it. Confidentiality, NDA needs to be signed by the acquirer and the acquiree. And then the due diligence process. An initial analysis of the target company should be prepared with an overview of the strengths and weaknesses of the company and their supply chain. And our finance guys are going to do this, and they're not going to invite us into it. It's not something we'll take part in here in PACCAR. Like I say, the VP may, the purchasing VP may. Then a more detailed analysis should include things like external environment for the target company's products. What's the market demand and market share? Internal environment, manufacturing systems, company's financial strength, the competitive market, key competitive strengths, market segmentation, etc. And current contractual obligations. Once a company knows it is targeted, its behavior may change. So purchasing needs to look and review all the contractual obligations and put into place contingency plans to ensure the continued supply throughout the due diligence process. And that's after the merger's been announced. And then financial assessments. The target company's financial strength and status must be reviewed through the analysis of key indicators. History of sales growth rate and sustainability of such growth rates should be analyzed. That stuff will all be done up front by financial groups here. Here's some things that they look at. And management of redundancy and complexity. During the due diligence, acquiring company is looking for potential savings through consolidations of similar jobs and functions, meaning they can lay off people. Today's overlapping business arrangements may create a company that is a competitor, customer, and supplier all at the same time. You just have to see how the combination works and what you spin off. Simulation of a new company can create a situation of both redundancy and complexity. And complexity can also result in the need to manage a different type of business that requires a different management style. And this happens in diversification when the companies get so big like General Electric that you've got a wide range of markets that you're serving and requires different management. Liability exposure. Acquiring a company may bring in with it the liabilities of the acquired company. So liabilities may include products manufactured and sold, pension plans, environmental cleanup, that's a big one, and management contracts. So depending on the merger and how it's written, the company that's buying the other company may have to assume these liabilities. And it may be necessary for purchasing to educate creditors such as suppliers on how to set up a plan to recover their claims and to continue to supply through bankruptcy. So if you're buying a bankrupt company, it gets even more complicated. Global economic considerations. As large companies emerge, domestic companies will be targeted for acquisition because they want into our market. Purchasing can help identify candidates for outsourcing that would contribute to the company's competitiveness. And companies will continue to look globally for supply when they feel the current supplier has greater power, pricing advantage. In certain commodities, you can look globally, and other commodities, it's just not going to work. Organizational structure, savings from consolidating duplicate operations are generally considered part of the valuation process. In other words, who can you lay off? So are critical to success of a new company, however painful they may be. And valuations, early involvement of key parties such as supply management and M&A activities becoming more commonplace in order to add value to assessing another organization. And I would, you don't really see it in large companies, but smaller to medium-sized companies, you probably would. Impact on the supply base. So the supply base will be affected by these mergers some way. If the combined companies are similar, the changes will be dramatic. If they're dissimilar, there will only be supply-based consolidations at some. So suppliers should be selected and retained pursuing predetermined supplier selection criteria. And the goal is to meet the company's needs at the best possible cost. So if we're buying a Volvo, then the changes to the marketplace for trucking are be quite dramatic in North America. If we're buying Chrysler, probably not so much. And here's a priority setting framework. So spend management opportunities have varying degrees of difficulty. Everybody knows this. So those involving the same supplier and identical or similar items, that's down here. These are rapid wins. Same item, same supplier, or similar item, same supplier. You can consolidate that pretty quick. Those with some moderate differences fall in the second wave. So you got same item, different supplier, similar item, different supplier, and different item, same supplier, and similar practices, process, and skills. Both of these are the second wave, the blue. And then the more difficult ones are those with significant differences, different item, different supplier, different practices. And you have to see if you want to pursue those at all. Impact on technology to enjoy synergies and communicate effectively across company information systems need to be combined. And a lot of companies will go out and buy other companies and never combine the information systems, which makes little sense. This will affect functional areas in the supply base. All right, our group questions here. So corporate management is pursuing a strategy of horizontal integration. It's identified several organizations for merger consideration. As a senior supply manager, you are tasked with leading the team developing the detailed analysis for one of the target organizations. In a meeting with the team, you review the high-level overview created when initial target companies were identified and discuss what approaches to employ. Team members consist of members from the supply market, intelligence, and the mergers and acquisition teams. We'll be collecting competitive intelligence to develop the detailed analysis requested by management. What should you do in reviewing the target company's external environment for products and services? So you're looking at the market that the target company operates in.
I say A. Are we supposed to answer or we just
Yeah,
put it in the chat or
this is
A?
the group questions. Yeah, I like that one best too, because it's more specific. The rest of these are all kind of general.
Yeah, but it covers everything you mentioned regarding market demand,
Yeah,
competitors, and trends
yeah,
and all that. Yeah.
yeah. And usually on these things, that's one of the longer answers, and the longer answers are usually right. Let's see what they say here. A is correct. Okay. One more here. Supply manager was recently assigned to the corporate M&A team as a subject matter expert in supply management. The supply manager focuses on creating a process to identify redundancies and complexity in the supply base of the two merged firms. Supply management processes, contracts, technologies, job descriptions, and roles. Failure to identify and mitigate these risks may result in service disruptions to both internal and external customers during a merger. So what actions should the supply manager take in developing a plan to reduce these risks without increasing costs? I know what one I like. What do you guys like?
I'm leaning towards B, conducting a
Yeah,
preliminary assessment of the risk associated with the supply base, supply management process, contracts, technologies, job descriptions, and roles.
yeah, it's more specific and it's longer. Alt tabs. B it is. All right, there's 9 questions out there, but it's 3:52, so go ahead and pull down the questions from the chat and we'll start going over answers in about 3 minutes. 3:55. So get as far as you can. All right. I'll go ahead and pull up answers here because we are running out of time.
Just like how it is when you're actually taking the exam.
Yeah. Let's go over some answers here and I'll post these in the chat so you guys can finish up going through the rest of the questions. Number 1 is C, Charlie. Consolidating the spend will allow for the strongest synergies. 2 is also Charlie. What is an NDA? Defines knowledge, how or will be used or shared by the parties. 3 is alpha. Management of redundancy and complexity, you're looking for the one that doesn't belong. It's done after the initial list of possible merger acquisition candidates, not before. 4 is Delta. The original ownership is less significant than the current benefits of the facilities. 5 is Charlie. Omega and this contractor no longer have a legal relationship, and this Omega can share details of this past contract with another entity. 6 is Bravo. The transfer or claim of a right from one party to another is the definition of assignment. 7 is Charlie. Both 1 and 3 are reasons for divesting assets. 8 is Alpha. Postponing the deployment would result in the loss of time and effort. And 9 is Delta. Vertical integration means expansion upstream or downstream. Remember, vertical is customers and suppliers. Horizontal is competitors. All right, so you guys can go finish the rest of these questions if you like. I would encourage it. I will post the answers in the chat. And that's all I got for you today.
Thanks, Rick.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Rick.
Yeah.